So Lewis, here we are in the interface where we've seen a lot of the trouble over the last few days, and this interface runs from the bottom of the Shankill right up to Highfield Spring Martin community, and these gates in particular is where a lot of the trouble has been.
Belfast has changed a lot in recent years, but in some ways it hasn't changed as much as you might think.
So we've seen them close when the trouble on Friday night and Thursday night, they were closed all night.
But just to be clear, I mean, this isn't an historic thing. This isn't something from like 1970s Belfast, 1980s Belfast. This is used in 2021 Belfast.
This is used 2021. Obviously at the height of the troubles it was used more often, but it's still used today. It still keeps the two communities separated from a lot of the young people who maybe would gather when tensions are high or just gather for recreational ratting.
Despite the reconciliation, despite Good Friday, despite power sharing for every Paisley and McGuinness breaking bread, there have remained in the shadows those who want to break bones. The walls, in every sense, didn't go away.
Yeah, the last few months we have definitely noticed there's been a tension on the ground, and we've been, I guess, thinking that some sort of trouble was going to spill out onto the streets.
Pastor Stephen Reynolds has lived on the Shankill since he was a boy. He's seen it all, and he's felt the tension rise since the start of the year.
Some of the kids are from the community, and they're being stirred up by sinister forces within the community to be on the street and cause this trouble in relation to issues which these kids don't even know about. So the Brexit issue, the Irish Sea border, the frustration of no prosecutions around the Bobby Story funeral, and then we also have the sense that there is possibly a United Ireland coming our way.
There's been much concern as to how it might be that such young children could be taken to the streets, but it is again to assume that an old world with its old fears had entirely gone, when it hadn't.
And you mentioned the prospect of United Ireland. Is that something, again, which genuinely animates a certain section of young people?
Certainly within the unionist community, we hear this quite a lot with the young people, that fear of a United Ireland. That's probably driven by what their parents are telling them and what that means. But there is that fear in unionist communities, young people and old people, that a United Ireland is a real possibility. And the Brexit sea border seems to make that more of a reality for a lot of people.
It is eerie in Belfast, all within, just waiting for sunset and what it brings. Having spoken to Loyalist voices, we've been told that there is an attempt to quell things, at least for the period of mourning after Prince Philip's death. After all, it hardly seems very Loyalist to be rioting right now. But once it's passed, they expect things to resume. And either way, if it is turned on and off, it does suggest that indeed these kids are being manipulated and controlled.
These were not adults, these were children, and very bluntly young children in some cases. It was also clear that behind them were adults who were instructing them, who were marshalling them, who were telling them where to go, who to attack. I saw a youth in a balaclava teaching young children how to make petrol bombs, sending some of them off to get rags, sending others to gather empty beer bottles lying around the street where the crowd had been drinking. That is not spontaneous, that is quite calculated.
We hand this woman, Margaret Thatcher, over to the devil, that she might learn not to blaspheme.
Some have compared this moment to the worst of the troubles of the 1970s. It isn't. If anything, it has echoes of the mid-80s, after the signing of the Anglo-Irish Agreement. A major constitutional change, a sense that something had been ceded to the Republic, yielding the fury of loyalism. But in at least one sense, loyalists today think that this is worse.
Margaret Thatcher signed the Anglo-Irish Agreement. It gave the Irish Republic's government a role in a consultative way in Northern Ireland's affairs for the first time. That enraged unionists, but she was at least straightforward and honest about what she had done. If Boris Johnson had been straight with people, he said there will be no checks GBNI, no checks NIGB. He knew that wasn't true. We've seen the documents from the government that he was being given, and so therefore I think that has added to a situation which already would have been deeply unstable in Northern Ireland.
Aware of the tension, the EU and the UK are hammering out changes to the protocol to make the border more porous, more acceptable to unionists. But more checks, not fewer, are due to come in over the course of this year, and it won't change the principle of the sea border. And longer term, there are other structural political problems to come as well.
Leave aside what happened last week, what might happen in the weeks and months to come. The fear is that there is now a deep political uncertainty baked into the politics of Northern Ireland. Firstly, the DUP, as the first party of government, are in the bizarre position where they're having to implement a major constitutional change about which they do not approve, their electors despise, and that they therefore have every incentive to criticise and potentially even destabilise. Secondly, there are elections next year to Stormont. Effectively, the protocol will be on the ballot and will be litigated day after day, potentially again destabilising. And thirdly, in 2024, the protocol itself comes up for reapproval in Stormont.
Yeah, there's always cliff edges in politics. There's always elections coming up, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But like I say, we cannot excuse what is happening on the streets.
Sure, no one would think that taking to the streets is a good thing, but isn't that rather convenient for your party to say, oh, well, you know, there's no excuse for any of this stuff? The Conservative Party and the Prime Minister were warned about all of this. They were warned about the instability of Northern Ireland. They were warned what the protocol might do, and he went ahead with it anyway.
I don't think that's relevant at all. We also saw, for example, the Assembly not sitting for 3 years. Now, that was nothing to do with the protocol.
Mercifully, the new week didn't start like the last. It was quiet in Belfast tonight. But for one reason or another, it is striking how few here think it will stay that way.